You're juggling it all: work, family, decisions, expectations, six hats, maybe more every single day. But behind the scenes, your body is running on stress, and stress left unchecked will lead to illness. I'm Dr. Shami, an integrated family doctor, and this is Six Hats, the podcast that helps you understand what stress is doing to your body and what you can do about it now. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Six Hats podcast. And today I sit down with multi-award-winning family and divorce lawyer Cassandra Kalpaxis, best-selling author, advocate, and creator of Australia's first divorce retreat. Now, from domestic violence prevention to helping women reclaim financial autonomy, Cassandra is rewriting the script for how women navigate separation with dignity and power. So welcome, Cassandra.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I loved this topic because, as our listeners know, what I do see in clinic is women going through years of chronic stress, and that leads to chronic disease. So that's what we see at the end result. And I always go back on their stories, like what were the big stresses, what were the major events in life? And often it is divorce, often it is an abusive relationship, but also that financial abuse, which doesn't always come out in the first conversation. It sort of comes out several conversations later because it could be shame, it could be guilt, be embarrassment, and often especially women do not talk about it. So I'm excited to have this conversation, Cassandra.
I'm super excited as well. I think it's really relevant, and I think so many women are experiencing it. It's just not spoken about in public life or, when they're speaking with their friends because of that shame you spoke about before. So I think it's a really great thing that you're doing.
Amazing. So I'm going to start off with my first question. What do women need to understand about protecting themselves financially, even within a relationship that feels stable?
Yeah, great question. It really is understanding your finances, understanding what's happening within the matrimonial relationship, within your, de facto relationship, whatever it is at that stage of life that you're at. How is money being applied? What income is coming in versus what's going out? It's having access to your own emergency fund that only you know about in the event that you need to leave or an emergency arises. It's really about getting some financial literacy. Speak with your accountant. Speak with the people who really are in control of the numbers. Sometimes that's family, and we see that a lot culturally, where it might be the case that it's a collective number of people that are controlling the finances. So I think that is a really important thing that I often say to women. If you're in an amazing relationship, that's great, but you should also know what's going on with your money every day of the week.
I love it. I love it. And I hear so many women, my husband takes care of it. My partner takes care of it. And they know nothing until something drastic happens. And I've actually seen so many women at the end of the journey where they go, wow, I was working for my husband's business. I was doing everything for my husband. I was not actually earning, did not have my own account. And then 20 years later, he left me and I actually have nothing. And they sort of hit poverty. Is that what you're seeing as well? Similar stories?
So often that whole I'm working for my husband's business, plus taking care of the children, plus never earning super, plus never earning a dollar through the work that I was doing and underpaid for. So common. And the really harsh reality of that is most of those women who then leave those relationships in their late 40s, early 50s, we know that they are at the highest rates of homelessness because they don't have any financial literacy or anywhere to fall back on. So it is a very common thing, or even women who are coming forward who, through the separation, find out that they were the director of a company they knew nothing about.
Wow.
And it's crazy. When I hear those stories, I just think, you didn't ask questions. And that situation that I often hear about, he slid the papers across to me on the kitchen table in the morning and just said, darling, sign this, I'm doing something, I need to get a loan, whatever. And them being in a relationship with somebody that they love and trusted didn't think about it for a second.
So true, because you just kind of fall into a trap. It's quick, it's busy, you're rushed. And I've actually heard those stories as well, where she didn't realize she was signing for a loan and she didn't even realize what she was signing for at all. And it was just hundreds of thousands in debt.
Absolutely. And they're huge problems. And that snowballs into a number of other things that we see around, okay, well, what problems have arisen as a result of that loan and who do those problems now exist? And trying to then pull back the circumstances around that happened is a really difficult exercise, particularly when at the time of signing it was a non-event. So try recalling something that you did as simply as brushing your teeth. It's really difficult to do.
So true. I'm going to move on to my next question because it's so important to be actually aware of financial abuse. And I'd
Yes.
love you to walk us through it. And what are the subtle signs that are often missed? And I'm going to give you an example. I actually know, have a friend who's was in quite a financially abusive relationship for 17 years and she didn't realize it. And
Yeah.
it came out when she left because she goes, I wasn't allowed to buy new clothes. We weren't allowed to spend money on holidays. We went back to the same place that was paid for. The penny dropped how abusive that was. But she
Yeah.
was so-called happy for years, but that was her normal. So I love to have a discussion around that.
That is something I see quite often. This whole mirage of we're really happy, but I have to seek permission while I'm in the groceries or in the grocery center to be able to see if I can buy the children moisturizer, which is a matter I was involved in not too long ago. Or recently, someone who was getting married, and when I pulled back the layers of what was going on in their financial relationship, she told me that she was getting a small sum of money that she was allowed to spend every month, but that was then also reviewed each week by her partner to ensure that she wasn't lavishly spending her salary that he was generously giving her. And this is all financial abuse. And it's quite often it comes from the nice guy. It's not really abuse because we don't look at it through the lens of the way that we have seen domestic violence. But if you are having to seek permission about what you can spend your money on, and let me be clear, matrimonial money is for everybody, not the person who's going to work. It's also the person who's at home raising children. And you have to question whether or not that extra purchase at Coles or Woolies or wherever you're shopping is going to cause an argument, or if you're scrambling for the receipt for the avocados because you didn't check with that is financial abuse. If you're having a conversation about whether or not you're allowed to open a separate bank account, that is financial abuse. If when you ask questions about what's going on in the finances, you're told, oh, that's not for you to worry about. That's my job. You don't need to know where that is or where those documents are, and you don't need to see the accounts, or I don't need to give you viewing access. That is financial abuse. Start asking questions. I'm very worried every time I have those conversations.
Wow. And all those comments, I hear it so often. It's
Yes.
actually more often than we think. So, what can women do in those situations? For example, someone's listening to this podcast and goes, oh my God, I think that's happening to me.
Yeah.
What can they do? Because it's a loving relationship. They don't want to sort of spark an argument. What's the first step they can take?
Always go and speak to a financial advisor. Always go and speak to your accountant. Get into the bank, speak to the manager, open your own account. You do not need permission to do that. If that's sparking an argument, we're not talking about you needing to, go and speak to those people. We're talking about you getting foot into your lawyer's office to talk about a safety plan for you to leave. It's really about making sure that if you're in that situation, start educating yourself about where the money might be going. If it's your money that's going in, you've got the right to be able to ask the accountant for documents. If it's the case that it's a joint account, you've got the right to have viewing access, get into the bank, make sure that you're able to do that. If it's the case that one person is earning income and you are the person who's staying at home, it's about asking the questions of, can I see your payslip? What's
Mhm.
happening in terms of that? What does your annual bonus look like? Where does that go? What do we spend it on? Have a conversation that is really curious and it's not accusatory, and you're more likely to get that information. Be involved in the budget that might be set up for the house and get on the same page about what those additional expenses that you're able to spend on looks like, and have some input into that. That is definitely the first step.
I love how you say be curious because often, we're thinking of what language can we use to start that conversation. Would you have
Yes.
any advice on timing? And obviously not do it first thing in the morning as you're rushing out through the
But,
door.
as the kids are like kicking off at bedtime or dinner time, which is what happens in my place. But very much, once the kids have gone to bed, or if it's the case that you're at home and everyone's just eaten dinner, or even the way I like to do it is my husband and I have what we call a bit of a weekly meeting. It's almost like a business meeting where we put things on the agenda because we're both so busy that if we don't schedule it, it doesn't happen. And I might say for that week, hey, just wondering what's going on next month when we've got these expenses coming in. What are we doing? What does the budget look like? Hey, do we have any big ticket items coming up that we both need to know about or that we're going to forget about, so that we can also work towards that, and making sure that you've planted the seed before that conversation happens is often a nice segue into it. And it might be something along the lines of, I've realized that I haven't really been involved with the money for a really long time. And I think you're doing probably an amazing job. But what I'd just like to know is what's going on, so that I can also be of any assistance or be more mindful when we're talking about it, so that I can then participate more fulsomely in that side of our relationship. That's
Amazing.
often not an accusatory way to go about it.
I love it. I love it. And it's just sort of sparking different ideas. And sometimes I often say, I like what you said, plan a time, but also maybe go for a walk or,
Yeah,
go for coffee and take away the stress of that. And like
absolutely.
when both are relaxed, it's much easier to have that conversation. And that's
Yes.
sort of my next question. For women who have no financial autonomy, like no superannuation, no savings, where do they even start when they feel they need to exit a relationship?
First start is to go and see a lawyer. And the reason for that is, we under the Family Law Act have ways to be able to get you access to those funds, whether it's through what we call a partial property settlement, where we sell assets quickly in order to try and get you some money, whether it's through a superannuation split, so some of your partner's super comes over to you, whether it's getting you an order for you to live in the home and for the other person to pay for the bills for a short period of time whilst we work out what's happening. That conversation is really, really important. But also, if you're leaving a relationship where there's been domestic violence, if there's been police intervention, you're entitled for a whole bunch of different payments that exist for victims of domestic violence. And that's a conversation that your lawyer should also be having with you. It's a conversation that your bank should be having with you when you talk to them about what's going on. And the more you have that conversation and you identify what's going on in your life, the more resources we can put you in touch with, and also those crisis intervention payments that can help to be able to transition you along the way.
I think that's brilliant advice because I actually remember sitting down with my friend who the lead up to leaving was actually about 2 to 3 years.
Yes.
And there were so many conversations where she goes, right, I'm ready to leave, but I have no money. I can't do it. It's not going to happen. And this was like 2 years before she finally did go to a lawyer and
Yes.
realized that she can do it. And I think often women feel stuck because they think they've got that.
Absolutely.
Would that be right? Yeah.
Totally. That's very much the feedback that I get every day. I'm never going to be able to leave. I've got no money. Where do I go? I'm scared for the future. And
I,
often I think it's just hearing that they do have options, because part of the conditioning in abusive relationships is quite often that message of, you need me.
yeah.
Without me, you're nothing. Without me, good luck, because I've supported you the whole way through. And it's breaking down that myth.
I love it. This actually leads me on to my next question, which is so topical. You created Not Another Girl. It's a domestic violence education program now taught in schools. What kind of patterns are you trying to disrupt early? And what have you learned from talking to teens?
I have learned that this generation of teens are so well advanced compared to my generation and my mother's generation. It is insane. Being able to speak to children who can readily identify what an unsafe relationship looks like, what the flags are for coercive control, and those types of language that we're using now these days is incredible, because I've sat with women who have been married for 35 years who are in their 60s and had to physically identify for them that they have lived through what is a domestic violence relationship. Because there was a whole generation of women before me who just thought that that was marriage. And it is crazy to me that they have lived through those things. So that program for me really came off the back of speaking to women who weren't able to readily identify that they were living in an abusive relationship. They knew something was wrong, but they actually didn't know that it was DV. And going into schools and speaking to children about what a safe relationship looks like, what a respectful relationship looks like, has been incredible, because it's being able to identify those patterns really early so that A, they don't end up in those relationships, but B, they also don't perpetrate behavior that they have seen their loved ones, their parents, their aunts and uncles, the people who they have been witness to, and then using that as a model to perpetrate that behavior later on in their own relationship. So being able to break the cycle of that really early has been an incredible and rewarding experience. But this generation is really so far advanced compared to what I've been working with. I'm actually really excited about it.
Amazing. So if we could give a quick summary, what does a safe and respectful relationship look like?
We're looking for the green flags. So we're talking about communication that is open, that is vulnerable, without fear of retribution, without fear of your most vulnerable side of you being used against you as a bargaining tool, without there being gaslighting, without you having to question whether or not things have actually happened or anybody has said anything. When you're free to engage with the other person, when you're able to access your own money, when you know what's going on, when there's transparency, when there is respect and there is consent, they are the essential ingredients to there being a safe relationship.
Amazing. And I'm just reflecting on so many patient stories that I've just literally heard in the last couple of weeks. And it's mind blowing, actually, how many women are going through. These are smart, amazing women who
Yes.
have gone through years of domestic violence and finally leaving it. And they're now in high exec jobs. And unfortunately, one patient was actually quite heartbreaking because she said she's a genius and she was just put down and she could have done so well. And now she's in her 60s and she realizes that domestic violent relationship where the husband sort of sabotages her success and
Yes.
happiness. And it's really sad to hear because she's 60. What is she, and she's not
Absolutely.
planning to leave, but she's finally come to understand that's actually probably really linked to a chronic disease of chronic fatigue, mental health issues, which
Yeah.
we don't always associate. So I'm loving what you're doing there. So you've helped so many women navigate separation with dignity. What are some key legal or emotional tools that really help women reclaim their power through the process? Because as we know, they often dread it. It can be quite toxic. So how do you do it differently?
It's really important that I explain to women when they come to see me, because something that I often hear is, I can't do this alone. And I keep saying to them, number one, you're not alone. You're here. We're a team. We're here to support you. You're the person who's now in the driver's seat, but we're the cheer squad behind you. But also, you've been doing this alone for the last God knows how long. You just think that because somebody else is in the room with you, that you've got some support. The reality is you've been making the tough decisions. You've been grieving on your own. You've navigated a lot of this. And what I often also say to them is, at the end of the day, you have control. You have control about how you respond or you don't respond. You have control about how this process works. And we have a number of different options to be able to assist you through the process. Everybody thinks about the one option when they think about divorce is, oh, it's horrible, it's acrimonious, we end up in court, everyone spends lots of money. But the reality is there are so many different pathways these days that we can take people down. If we have to pivot, sure. And sometimes we do end up in that situation where we're in the court. But the beauty of that is if we have somebody who we can work really well with, we're quite often using the court as a bit of a platform to be able to get in and get out. And that process is really quick. We don't have to spend a lot of time there or a lot of money. We get what we need, and then we can get people off the exit ramp. So once I've explained that to people, it becomes a little bit easier for them to understand that there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's not tenable to stay where you are. And in fact, if you continue to stay where you are most definitely going to end up with chronic disease, because I see that every day too.
Oh,
And we want to be in a position where people can extricate themselves from those situations for their health, but also for their legal system.
amazing. Amazing. So on a personal note, Cassandra, you're a professional, you're a mother, you're a wife,
Yes.
author. How do you manage stress? What do you do to create a bit of balance?
I have previously managed stress very badly. So that has been a work in progress for me. But I have learned over the last maybe 2 years that it's really important for me to be outside. So I quite often, when I'm having a really stressful day, will go outside and just do a walk. And I listen to music, which I find really relaxing. And I really prioritize ocean. For me, being close to water, that reset is so, so important. Even in winter, my husband thinks I'm mad, but I'll do the drive out to the beach and just sit there on my own for a little while. And also, it's really important for me to unpack. So I have an amazing support system of other professionals who, when I'm having just one of those days, will talk it out with me.
Hmm.
And that can be really important. And I think that that's the mark that a lot of people miss when they're in separation is they don't know who to talk to. And sometimes the people that they do talk to are the wrong people, because we know not everyone has our best interests at heart. And sometimes they do, but they do it in a way that comes from a different lens because they don't understand what's going on. So finding the right people has been really important for me, and putting those measures in place that are non-negotiables. Like, I could make every excuse under the sun not to go for a walk. I've got 3 kids, a husband, I've got a practice. It's very busy. But the reality is if I don't do that for myself, nothing else will function.
Absolutely. I loved what you mentioned about support network. And it's really interesting. One of the questions we always ask our patients, it's about loneliness, screening for loneliness.
Yes.
And it's often the perception of loneliness as well. And it's really sad to hear so many women go, well, actually, I don't have anyone to speak to about
Yes.
the true problems. And especially what I see now is just moving away from that beautiful, amazing community where you might have an uncle or an aunt or an elder in the community that you can actually go
Yes.
to and seek advice. Unfortunately, now we've got to pay to see a psychologist if you want that sort of objective advice. And we actually really got to think about our support networks and how important it is for human existence and also to lower that stress level because we're not meant to do this on your own at all.
No, absolutely. I'm completely with you on that.
Amazing. Well, thank you for your time today, Cassandra. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you on social media if you do?
TikTok, Instagram is definitely where you can find me. DM is the easiest way to get through to me. Other than that, you can definitely get in contact with me through my firm, which is Kalpaxis Legal, and we'll be able to have a chat to you about whatever it is that you're navigating.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Cassandra.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Six Hats, where it's all about progress, not perfection. If this episode spoke to you, don't wait, hit follow now, leave a quick review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Want to take your next step today? Download my ebook. The link is waiting in the show notes. And remember, this is general advice only. Always speak to your practitioner for anything medical. See you next time.